to give a directive that the finance minister should find money to pay cocoa farmers who have sold their produce to the license buying companies. This morning we were waiting for the press conference at 11 o'clock. It didn't happen. 1 o'clock, it didn't happen. It started somewhere around 2:30 thereabout. Only to hear that the producer price has been slashed by more than 1,000 Ghana cedis. 10 million. From 3,625 to 2,587. This has never, ever happened in the history of this country. Why are we treating cocoa farmers this way? Why? Cocoa farmer has never enjoyed the full benefit of the FOB. Never, ever. Sometimes we even pay them 40%. Cocoa farmer has sacrificed for this country. And in fact, if the cocoa farmers' farm gate price is going to be reduced by almost 30%, then everybody's pay in this country should also be slashed by that margin. Is the chief executive officer of Cocoa Board, his allowance and salary, is it going to be slashed by the same margin? I am sad. Today is a sad country for everybody. And I think the president should come again. Cocoa farmers deserve better. And they should not be treated like trash. I thank you very much for your attention. Enura Mobetia, President Kase offer emergency meeting. Then you know say emergency meeting now offer no. E dia sem papa beba. The na meeting na so Obekase finance minister. Kwa wi sika na fa betua akuafoka. Efisanye na nko na cocoa price akofom. Yewura kofo abreso cocoa price akofom. Kofo pe kwan papa so e de tua akuafoka. Yewura omampanyin Kufo Addo abreso international price ekofom omampanyin pe kwan papa bi so e de tua akuafoka. Akuafo na ahwe Ghana saa free set tate kwahye di cocoa buy 1879. Ne efre na FOB price ade bi ekogye no international market no. Yemfa ni nyina ma akuafo da. Da bia yetua ne kese na 70%, ohemu chechemu aduoson. Edrum e bi kra etimi ba fom 40% pen ye de ma akuafo. And the international price akofom a afepe na omubu man ye o. Afepe na wate akuafo wo mo akatua wo de ma wo mo so 10 million. 10 million o. Nti akuafo wo mo nya de en. Akuafo na show man yisa ye ma ye scholarship ye de bi ya kwan ye de bi CBB a akuafo na show man nyina na no ukohwe Bank of Ghana omo report ba ya report no nko ase afie nko ano 2025 nko ano omo nya 3.9 billion dollars wo de fa multiply current rate into sika na akuafo sika no omo de ye de na ebo ne kofom a wo kote akuafo omo akatua de ma wo so 10 billion bag of the bebe bia nti mo gidi se one akuafo adi ne ye ye beto aba asembe ne yantiam free yewura Kopoko asembe ne yantiam free yewura atofo sin ho senya me ya adom mahama na mu o se wonni kokofo akopa asase wonni kokofo akopa asase enti asase ayen kopene no nie resetting no enu nie resetting enu nie so ahu na yenti ne panyinsam da say yati koko akuafo eboso koko akuafo na ahwe o man yisa enti media mesre say yati koko akuafo eboso dia ene ye Ghana ha ene ye adwuma nyina yenti obia koko na katua so ena koko border chief executive monkohwe ne office monkohwe ne office baabi ana ne manager office wo ho na wode aye dan ne monkohwe ne fie asiasi a waye afi nkoa wato Land Cruisers 4 na ane de yente so enti na katua ne yebete so ena me wura ho pa da me wura ho kese pa ya da me ma me wuye ene de ya atwa sa de no mo ya atwam enti resra mo nyina mo fama no ntumbi yen switch ma akuafo na ya akuafo na show man yi saa bepem ne adan ne atutu o msa nti yesrew man panyin se wo mra biem na nan kina ya o meka sa papa foforo enkyere akuafo na se ne we pass what so 10 billion de yempene anu kwan de yempene nti yesrew wo man panyin se won san mra biem yedamase
So, ladies and gentlemen of the press, we were told that the Minister for Finance was coming to announce what they call a restructuring of the cocoa sector. We are very surprised that the minister rather used the opportunity to shortchange cocoa farmers. Before we left government, we introduced a turnaround strategy for cocoa board, and we worked on this with the IMF. This strategy was intended to comprehensively restructure cocoa board. What is happening today in the cocoa sector is not surprising to us because this government has failed to implement the cocoa board turnaround strategy. That is why cocoa board is facing these challenges. I heard that the minister is directing to move the cost of cocoa roads to the Ministry of Roads. This measure was in the strategy, the turnaround strategy that we handed over to them. It took them 1 year. They have not implemented it. Only because there is now crisis in the cocoa sector, the minister has rushed to announce this measure, which the minister was well informed about in the strategy for turning around cocoa board, which we handed over to them. They were also supposed to legislate a transparent pricing policy for cocoa. They have not done that. They were to remove some cost items which tend to reduce the producer price of cocoa, which we thought were unnecessary and in some cases duplicative. They have not done that. They were supposed to get cocoa board to move away from non-core businesses and also to improve on efficiency and reduce cost, particularly in procurement. They have not done that. And so as far as we are concerned, this NDC government did not need to announce any new strategy for restructuring cocoa board. And as we expected, they could not announce any comprehensive strategy for restructuring cocoa board. If they implemented the strategy that we handed over to them, cocoa board will not be in this mess. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am even surprised that the IMF is sleeping over this. Because we developed this strategy in consultation with the IMF as a requirement, one of the requirements for implementing the IMF program. I'm really surprised that the IMF has gone to sleep on this. And this government is recklessly managing the cocoa sector, which has brought us to this unprecedented crisis in the sector. Given the scale of the crisis in the sector now, a sector which is one of the most important pillars of our economy, one expected the government to give cocoa board a bailout, as we did during the MPP time, rather than reducing the producer price for cocoa. A bailout would have been necessary, particularly at the time we are told that the economy is strong and resilient. They said they are better managers of the economy. An economy that is better managed cannot pay cocoa farmers. An economy that is better managed reduces the producer price of cocoa. And so Ghanaians can see the deception and the narrative that the NDC government brought to them about our government, the previous MPP government, as having badly managed the economy. Ghanaians can now see who is better managing the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the cocoa of Ghana, Ghana's cocoa, is now considered more expensive. And this has been confirmed by the CEO of Cocoa Board, my friend Randy Abe. He has confirmed in an interview that Ghana's cocoa is now more expensive, and therefore consumers are turning away from Ghana's cocoa, as a result of which demand for Ghana's cocoa has fallen. The reasons for this are not far-fetched. We warned this government about the reckless overvaluation of our currency. We warned them several times that these dollars they are pumping and pumping into the economy, that reckless intervention. Last year alone, they intervened to the tune of 10 billion United States dollars. The trend has continued. That reckless overvaluation of our currency will affect our economy. Because those of you who understand economics know that when you overvalue your currency, it adversely affects the export competitiveness of your country. And so, is it surprising that the competitiveness of cocoa on the global market is reducing? Is it surprising? Because this government thought that managing an economy is by pumping dollars to shore up the city. And now this is the effect. Overvaluation, when your currency appreciates unreasonably, as we are seeing, your exports suffer. Rather, what you see is promotion of imports. And so more imports are coming into our economy. Our exports are losing value on the international stage. And increasing imports will only come to reduce the domestic production base, because it will affect domestic production of goods and services. This is why you go to the market today, imported rice is now more expensive than locally produced rice. You go to the market, imported maize is now more expensive than locally produced maize. This government is cheaper. It's now cheaper than locally produced maize. This government should know, because they have economists amongst them. They should know that anytime you are implementing a policy, there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs, and therefore by overvaluing the currency as a policy, they should know that other sectors will suffer. So what a responsible government has to do is to achieve what we call policy equilibrium. Policy equilibrium, so that all sectors are protected. I'll give you an example. They tell us that inflation is now 3.8%. Good, isn't it? It's good. But if you look at what we call purchasing power parity approach in economics, it tells you that when your inflation is 3.8%, your currency should depreciate by at least 3.8% in order to protect exports. What do we see? They are going around bragging about appreciation. That is poor economics. When your inflation is 3.8%, your currency should depreciate by more than the inflation rate in order for you to protect your exports. Because your exports is your economy. Your exports create jobs. And so in this era of 24-hour economy, the least this government could do was to protect the exports of our country and thereby protect jobs in this country. Rather, at the time they passed the authority for 24-hour, they are also reducing the domestic production base and thereby reducing opportunities for employment in the country. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my view is that the figures they are branding about, inflation is this, the exchange rate is this, is killing, behind these inflation figures, is killing our economy. And the cocoa sector has just exposed them. The cocoa sector has just exposed them. Maize, I'm just coming from my constituency. They have piles of bags of maize that they are not able to sell, because people will go to buy the imported maize at the expense of locally produced maize. And so the efforts our farmers are putting into this work to save our economy, to save our country, to feed our country, this government, the NDC government, is recklessly undermining all these efforts. And it won't be long before Ghanaians will see the reality of this government. So I thank you very much.
Colleagues, good afternoon. Just to add a few more comments and then we will wrap up. First of all, we are of the view that we did not need, the Republic of Ghana did not need an emergency cabinet meeting just for the purposes of discussing how to pay cocoa farmers. When you have to call an emergency cabinet meeting just for the purposes of discussing how to pay cocoa farmers, then there's a real crisis in government, which you are covering up with some numbers and some narratives. In the previous MPP era, payment of cocoa farmers was a matter of regular procedure. Now emergency cabinet meetings are being called just to discuss how to pay cocoa farmers. But to the more substantive argument, first of all, the announcement that Cocoa Board should immediately pay them, that announcement is of no effect. Because that announcement presumes that Cocoa Board has the money and was deliberately refusing to pay the farmers. Is that what was going on? No. Because if this whole press conference is about the fact that the government went to a cabinet meeting and has instructed Cocoa Board to pay the farmers, seriously, it raises more questions than answers. Because unless you are saying that the money was available and Cocoa Board was refusing, then what the government should be doing specifically is instructing that emergency liquidity assistance should be released to Cocoa Board to pay the farmers, not an announcement that they should be paid. But we don't want you to forget the two main causes of the crisis we're having in the cocoa sector now. Two main causes. Number one is that the new managers of the cocoa sector have reset the trading program of Cocoa Board. We used to sell about 70% on forward sales and 30% on spot. They argued that that was an incompetent approach and decided to change it. And now they are selling about 70% on spot. That is why today, as prices have dipped, they are struggling and are saying that the price they had announced ends up being higher than the current prices on the market. That's number one, because of their own decision to reset the trading model. Number two is the artificial injection of forex into the Ghanaian economy, which has overvalued our cedi, as Dr. Amin rightly explained, and is therefore making our exports relatively more expensive. Remember, we've been raising this matter for a while now. And when you say, they say, oh, dollar has come down, clap for us. Now we are beginning to see the effect, at least in the first area, in the cocoa sector. This action to announce a 28% reduction in the price amounts to a haircut of about 28% on close to 1 million Ghanaian cocoa farmers. You may not recognize it. 28%, 28.6% reduction, this 28.6% haircut is going to affect about 1 million cocoa farmers. And if you add to it the number of people who assist them on the farms and their dependents, my gosh, we're getting to maybe 3-4 million people are going to be affected by this haircut that the NDC government has announced. You see, when you manage an economy with artificial adjustments, the real effect will be realized on cocoa farms, in transport fares, in electricity bills, in school fees. Now you are beginning to see the real impact of some of the things that we are talking about. And it is now clear that this NDC government cannot be trusted. When the MPP moved cocoa prices from 475 Ghana cedis per bag to 3,100, they told the people of Ghana that we were robbing them and that they should actually be getting 6,000 to 7,000 Ghana cedis. And just about 1 year in their tenure, they could not even pay the 6,000. They now said 3,650. No.
And 25.
3,625. And even that one, they can't pay. They have to call an emergency cabinet meeting to announce that Cocoa Board should pay. And then after that, they announce a 28% haircut on the poor Ghanaian farmer. One of the impacts, and that's what I want to conclude with. Already when you go into the cocoa growing areas, I was in my areas just a few days ago. A lot of young people are already not going into cocoa because they say the older folk who went into it, they don't see a transformation in their lives. It's left with the old, elderly, poor on the farms. When you do this, what is going to happen in subsequent years is that even those ones will not be going into the cocoa production. If they won't sell their cocoa farms to Galamsey operators, God knows what they will do. They will abandon their farms. Now, what it means also is that the productivity, the growth, the jobs, and the incomes that come from the cocoa sector, the foreign exchange that comes from the cocoa sector in subsequent years it's all going to dwindle. And so we in the minority have a number of requests to government. All of this has come about because of the reset that Cocoa Board did. And that is why, respectfully, we ask the president to relieve the Cocoa Board CEO of his responsibilities at this point in time. Number two, we are asking the government that in previous times when cocoa prices fell and the government absorbed the shock and protected the cocoa farmer, the NDC government should absorb the cost of what they have done and protect the cocoa farmer and restore at least the 3,625 that they promised. This 2,800 or so that they are promising is totally unacceptable. Already we are receiving messages from cocoa farmers who say that if this is what is going to happen, they are going to demonstrate in a number of these. And if they do, we in this caucus, we will join them on the streets to do this demonstration. We thank you for the time and the opportunity that you gave us. Chi, okay. Abusia for me born to for chi mu kiti bi. Edi kan no na ehun hia sa ban be frɛ cabinet meeting, emergency cabinet meeting say yekodwindwin kwan ya be fa so atua cocoa akuafo eka. Edu emra e wo sa wo frɛ cabinet meeting say wo kodwindwin kwan ya betua cocoa akuafo ka. Na kyerɛ say asɛm wɔ hɔ e na wo kata so. Asɛm kɛse wɔ hɔ na wo kata so. Na sa announcement we o man say Cocoa Board enkotua akuafo no. Eni nyina so obi esan say e kamia say ne sika no wɔ hɔ deda. Ena Cocoa Board eboa pa say omuntua. Na nya sa de we announcement say omunkotua sen. De wo sa ban ne ye ne say o chef finance minister na we na okasa ne say prekope onkope sika de friend emergency liquidity assistance emma Cocoa Board. Na Cocoa Board mfintua. Sa nya sa na abeka say omunkotua omka de na ne che say ne sika no wɔ hɔ. Na bro ne trimodinti na onye den. Untua om. Na eden na akofa we aba ye mpese mo re befi ne ma mienu akofa we aba ba ko ne say aban we buy no ma sakra o ma sesa kwan e fa so ton ye cocoa first na ye de ani hwe daache ebo future prices and as a forward trading na ya ton o hanchichemu e de osun 70%. On buy no mo se ye nim ye nti o ma sesa no o ma pam mpanifo ni bi ye de o mo nkofo abahim ena na o ma sesa no say o mo be 30% on futures.
This is Channel 1 TV. I am Akosia Otri. We brought to you a press conference by the minority in Parliament. You just heard the Kojo Nkrumah, the Ofuasia Yoruba Member of Parliament, and also the member on the Economy and Development Committee of Parliament. There was also Dr. Amin Adam, who is the former finance minister. And also you had there Yao Isaac Opong, who happens to be the minority ranking member on agriculture. Now, they've been talking about a number of things regarding the cocoa sector. Earlier, we had the finance minister address the public on issues regarding financing to cocoa farmers. Well, they indicated that the cocoa crisis that we are seeing, one of the reasons is that Cocoa Board in 2022, their financing had deteriorated, and so it led to default in some payments, and there was some restructuring in the cocoa bills in 2023. But the minority says there's actually a haircut in what is going with regards to the new producer price that we've seen. That is, they are saying that the slashing of the price is going to, not really help farmers. And with what we are seeing, they're saying that the 70% of FOB guarantee in the new Cocoa Board bill, which now we know is expected to be presented in Parliament, is not going to reflect in farmers' pockets. We have here in the studio to be the head of news, monitoring events with regards to what is happening in the cocoa sector. Nana, you're welcome. With what a minority is saying, let me first pick your general comments on their press conference.
Well, you'd expect the minority to react to the government's announcement of the reforms in the cocoa sector. And this will be because, as a minority, they're supposed to exercise their oversight, of course, being members of Parliament. But again, recall that the minority earlier held a press conference highlighting the challenges in the cocoa sector and throwing some demands at government for government to immediately raise money to pay the farmers. The farmers have not been paid since October. You know, the season starts between September and October. So payment hasn't been done since then. And so the minority had cause to complain, held a press conference earlier. Subsequently, the president called an emergency cabinet meeting. We're actually expecting the reforms to have been announced yesterday, but Minister in charge of Government Communications, Felix Kwakye-Ofosu, did tell us yesterday after that cabinet meeting that the finance minister was going to announce some reforms today. The finance minister has gone ahead to make those announcements, covering a wide range of issues, administrative processes, legislative instruments to be presented, if you like, the redirection of Cocoa Road debts to the finance ministry, moving that away from Cocoa Board and all.
And so Cocoa Board itself, restructuring to be happening there soon. Yeah.
Even calling for a forensic audit into Cocoa Board and its operations. Clearly and obviously the minority would have listened in to that particular announcement, would have watched the press conference by the finance minister and have jotted down their own points, where they see lapses and what they think can be done to, if you like, restore cocoa to its former glory as our biggest foreign exchange earner. If you listen to Dr. Isaac Yao Opoku, who is a ranking member on the Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs Committee of Parliament, so the press conference basically was broken into 3 parts, and you notice that, so there's a ranking member on Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs, so he is a cocoa person, an agric person, speaking to the impact of the reduction of the cocoa producer price, the farm gate price, on farmers. Then you had Mohammed Amin Adam, MP for Karaga, but also a former finance minister, speaking to, if like, some strategies or policies they left behind, and saying that if same had been implemented, we wouldn't be where we are today. And then, of course, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah speaking to policy, because he's a member of the Economic and then Policy Committee of Parliament. So basically that's how they structured that.
Yes, and you had the former finance minister, Dr. Amin Adam, related it to the economy and the currency. Well, he said that the overvaluation of the overvaluation of the currency is resulting in what we are seeing in the cocoa sector. Clearly,
because so if the cedi is gaining strength as against the dollar, mind you, we import with dollars, we export with dollars. So if the cedi gains strength as against the dollar, what happens is that you are able to import more.
Yeah.
And then your exports are restricted, because now the price of your produce on the international market becomes more expensive as against other countries who are exporting same produce. Yeah. And just as was mentioned, same has been admitted by the CEO of Cocoa Board, Dr. Randy Abbey. What is happening is that, and for them, they relate it to the forex, or if you like, the strengthening of the cedi. Yeah. Well, it can also be debated, but we'll leave it to what the reason they are ascribing to it. What happens is that this will impact the revenues of Cocoa Board, because now buyers on the international market will begin to look for cheaper options. And so you are looking at countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Ecuador, Brazil, okay, because they are also producing heavily. Yeah. And then, but what helps us is there's the quality of our cocoa that gives us that, if you like, strength over these other countries. However, if our prices are not competitive, and if this is as a result of our forex, our currency gaining strength against the dollar, which of course is the trading currency when you go on the international market, then there's a challenge, because then your produce becomes more expensive. You are unable to beat competition based on pricing. And I don't think on the international market, quality alone will take you there. Pricing is also very, very important. So that is one of the reasons they ascribe to the crisis that we are facing. The other one also, as mentioned by Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, will have to do with what they say is a reset of the trading model by the current CEO of Cocoa Board, for which reason they are calling for his immediate dismissal. They argue that the CEO has changed the trading module from the previous 70% FOB sales and all that, which we know cocoa, we have the forward sales and we have the spot sales. Cote d'Ivoire currently is doing spot sales, which allows some level of deregulation in the system, and so farmers are able to sell at certain prices. However, we don't do that, we do forward sales, and that's why you recall that we do syndicated loans in the past. We borrow to buy and sell. However, there are losses in there, because if, say, you borrow to buy 1 million tons, however, you are only able to sell 800,000 tons, then you have a deficit of 200,000 tons, and that is the rollover that has been happening over the years, over the period, and that is one of the things that is actually crippling Cocoa Board, saddling Cocoa Board with debt. And so that's one of the issues they raise. So they attribute to the current crisis, one, to the strengthening of the cedi, which they actually say is artificial because they think government continues to artificially pump in more dollars into the system, and that weakens the dollar as against the cedi and affects revenue of Cocoa Board. And then also they accuse Dr. Randy Abe, CEO of Cocoa Board, of resetting the trading module. And of course, that also leading to the crisis.
Okay,
that
before
we're
we
currently
go, I
seeing.
mean, we all agree that the cocoa sector is a critical issue, or a critical sector that we need to talk about when issues like this happening. Because, I mean, we are the second largest producer of cocoa in the world. But the minority took a jab at government, you know, criticizing, asking why there should be a cabinet meeting over, you know, payments to be made to cocoa farmers. I don't know if you have anything.
Well, I can understand where you're coming from, because within the space, there's been a conversation about where government's priority is and the sense of urgency attached to which sector. Recall that Gold Board is making a lot of revenue for the government through its dealings. So it will appear as though there's a lot more attention on gold now, and cocoa seems to have been relegated. And you can buttress this point with the time period within which this cabinet meeting was held. The challenge started coming in from October of last year. So October, November, December, January. That's 4 months. It had to take the precedent to call for an emergency cabinet meeting. And that's why you hear Oppong Nkrumah say that if what it would take is a cabinet meeting to direct Cocoa Board to make payments to farmers, then it suggests that Cocoa Board has the money, which they don't. You get it? Because there's a directive for Cocoa Board to pay the farmers.
Right.
But Cocoa Board does not have that money as at now. Cocoa Board as at now is not even credit worthy, and so cannot go for any syndicated loan. And that's why the previous administration started talking about raising the funds locally, putting local banks together to raise the funds to buy cocoa beans from the farmers. And so if, from per what Kojo Oppong Nkrumah is saying, if all it would take is a cabinet meeting to direct Cocoa Board to make the payments, then it suggests that Cocoa Board has the money to pay, but it does not. And that's why he thinks that the meeting itself was not necessary in the first place.
All right, thank you very much, Nana, for that detailed analysis of the minority press conference that we brought to you. I am Akosua Ochoe. Many thanks for choosing us, and keep watching Channel One Television.